It's about this. We create community, use challenge as the catalyst.
The trust breeds magic.
We're going to connect on the same level.
Possibility is bigger than they imagine.
Like any experiment, the reason you do it is to learn.
Who would you be without opportunity?
The learnings of this experiment are going to be on the edge of what's possible.
Everybody!
I can do this, and it's worth doing.
This became a love for us, this place.
It's wonderful to be able to share some of my ideas with you, and something that I usually don't do, but because of yesterday's introduction, I want to talk a little bit about how I got here, and then I'll talk a little bit about the work. So I have come to this in a slightly different trajectory than some others, in that I never had a vision. Actually, my vision was I was a hippie and that I was going to smoke pot and play music for the rest of my life, and other things. And so that's really what I thought I was going to do. I got to California in 1968. It was a summer of love. I turned on, tuned in, dropped out, got involved with the music scene, and then when I split up with the band, because when you're married to a guy in a band, you're actually married to the band. So, and I was working in a health food restaurant, and it was a Cheech and Chong moment. This white van pulls up, and everybody hustles to get sort of the restaurant all sort of closed up. And I said, "What's going on?" They said, "Oh, we're going to class." And they said, "You should come." I was like, "Okay." So the door of the van opened, all the smoke poured out of it. We all got in. Went into the city, and I experienced my first Aikido class. And I fell in love. I had been a horse person growing up with horses, and Aikido had that same thing of being able to manage all this intensity and power with grace and beauty, and how to work with myself. And I realized that it was a way that I could study with my body what I'd been studying with my mind for a long time, which since I was quite young, I was interested in Buddhism, and I was on kind of a spiritual quest. And I'd read all these books and knew all these things, but my body was on a different program because I'd lose my temper and freak out, even though I knew better. And Aikido was a way I could start to train my body how to be more relaxed and open, more inclusive in stressful situations. There's a wonderful Bruce Lee quote that goes, "Under duress, we don't rise to our expectations, we fall to our level of practice." And I realized that I knew all this stuff and I couldn't do it when I was stressed. So I actually started training Aikido, and then people right away, this was not my thing, kept saying, "You're such a good teacher." And I was a hippie, and my daughter's middle name is Namaste. That's how much of a hippie that I was. She was born in a cabin in the woods without electricity or water, and I was like, "Whoa, baby, far out." Yeah, she was 5 weeks early. She was breech. I didn't even know that was a problem. As she was being born, I said to my husband, "The baby has a crack in its head." He goes, "That's not the head." I'm like, "It's not? That's not supposed to happen." So I was really out of it in some ways, but everything worked out. So when I was training Aikido, the idea that I would be a teacher was completely crazy. The idea that I'd ever write a book, and I've written 2 and I have a 3rd about to come out, was totally crazy. But I always wanted to make a contribution, and there were people around me who they saw what I didn't see. I sometimes joke we're all like this, and you would say, "Wendy, there's a hand on your face," and I would say, "I feel something." I don't get to see it. You can see mine, I can see yours. And not everybody can vision. I know a lot of people here have had amazing visions, been able to implement them, do incredible things, jump, do all those things you spoke about yesterday. But for me, knowing what I want and going after it has always been very difficult. So for if there are any of you who have a little bit of that, feeling like you don't have that vision, what I'd like to suggest is you don't have to. We do need to want to make a contribution. But I think if we open ourselves and see what's around us, maybe something will come up. I ended up working in a prison for 7 years, developing a program there. I never thought I would do that. But someone said, would you like to come do a program in a prison? I'm like, sure, why not? It turned into this amazing experience. I learned so much. So I had friends who said, you're a great teacher. And I was like, I don't know what you're smoking, but I don't teach. I play music. And so I've been actually doing workshops. I developed these exercises using Aikido principles. And I had been practicing mindfulness since the 60s too. When I first got to California, I was hitchhiking and got out of this car and a book fell out on my feet, and it was Autobiography of a Yogi. So this guy said to me, well, that means you must need this book. So I said, sure, and read it, and started taking the SRF, the Self-Realization Fellowship correspondence course, Yogananda. So I'd been practicing for a long time, and I found that I could have these incredible experiences on my zafu, but when I would go out into the other part of the house and my kid would be screaming and the phone would be ringing, I would completely lose it. I could do all these amazing things on the Aikido mat. People, you can flip these big guys around, but I'd go home and my 30-pounder would take me off center like that. So I wanted to find a way to bring the principles of these two wisdom traditions into everyday life in a way that everybody could use them in a way that it can affect. So that's a little bit of the history of how that started. And then I was teaching here and there, but I always thought it was a side gig, and I never considered myself a teacher. Until one day I was doing a workshop, and the person introduced me as someone who'd been doing this work for 10 years. And I realized, oh my gosh, I'm a teacher who does music on the side. I thought it was the opposite. So I think that there are a lot of ways in which the universe will offer us opportunities. And if we just see what's there, we can move forward. That can be our inspiration. We don't necessarily have to know exactly what we want to do. And for those who do, you're awesome, and I'm so glad you're able to have that vision and move forward and implement it. But for those of us who have trouble having a vision, we still can find amazing ways to manifest and contribute things. So the leadership embodiment work, it's now called leadership embodiment instead of conscious embodiment, because I do programs in South Africa and in Europe, and conscious embodiment doesn't really translate. For instance, in French, we have people who've been trained in France, and it doesn't translate. In French, you're either conscious or you're unconscious. You're dead or you're alive. So they're like, what do you mean, conscious embodiment? But leadership embodiment, everybody sort of gets. So that's hence the name change. And the whole notion of leadership embodiment is that we don't have to transform ourselves into people who are wise and compassionate and powerful, because that's a hard sell. We can actually invite wisdom, compassion, and power to come through us. From a cultural point of view, this is solid, this is empty, and that's solid. But actually, from a scientific point of view, this is not that solid, this is not that empty. And there are many wisdom traditions that have amazing capacities. Tibetan lamas, for instance, who were tortured for many years by the Chinese, don't have post-traumatic stress syndrome. Drives Western psychologists crazy, because they should. But their view of life, their reality is different than some of this Western idea, because they know they're not solid. They know that they're part of the universe. They know there's huge amounts of space running through everything, and you can't torture space. So if you're identifying with that sense of space, it allows you to view the situation differently. Yes, the body will have pain, but if you don't identify 100% with the solidness of this body. So on the positive side of it, we make a distinction between these two parts of ourselves in this work. One I call personality. Personality is the Wendy that wants to be secure and safe. And the way we break it down is control. The head likes control, the heart likes approval, and the core likes safety. And that's how we try to manage everything. And it's quite exhausting, actually, because we're trying to create security in an insecure world. And it takes a lot of energy. For instance, if I'm in my approval mode and I want you to like me, oh, that's a little too much. No, like me a little more. No, not quite that much. We drive each other crazy. And it's a huge amount of work getting just the right amount of approval. And I don't know, for those of you, I'm a control freak who try to keep everything in control. That's quite tiring, too. The good news is we've got another part of ourselves, and that's the part that I think needs a little bit more repetition, a little more building. Up, we call that part center. And center is the experience that we have when we touch into what's called the zone or the flow state. Pretty sure everybody here knows those terms, but I work in places where they've never heard of the zone or the flow state. So the way I define it is you're doing an activity and you're efforting at it. And then suddenly, just like that, it becomes absolutely easy and effortless. And since I'm small and a woman and now I'm older, I really need to be able to use that on the Aikido mat because some of the guys in my dojo are half my age and twice my size, and I cannot go muscle to muscle with them. I have to use this other phenomena. So I've been always sort of interested in what is it when you're in that zone, or if you're working with a team, the flow state, where you're struggling with the team around something and then, boom, it opens up and everything starts to flow. Why aren't we using that more? And my theory is why we're not using it is because we're too busy doing it. And I don't mean in the do sense, but we're too busy making stuff happen. And we don't have quite enough familiarity with how do I let it come through me. So one way to do that is to be in touch with what are the elements of wisdom, compassion, or power, the inspiration that we can invite through us. Myself, I have what I call my posse, and I use 3 major ones and lots of minors. I invite the Dalai Lama to come through my head for wisdom, Mother Teresa to come through my heart for compassion, and the founder of Aikido to come through my core for confidence. So when something happens, my personality, I'm a doubter by nature. I'm a 6 on the Enneagram, and my first thing is, I can't do it. And that still comes up. But very quickly I can say, oh, yeah, but certainly Mother Teresa can. Oh, Dalai Lama wouldn't have a problem with this. And then it shifts, and all of a sudden I feel connected to that. And so it's been a wonderful tool for me to be able to manage my need for security. Because Wendy, in personality, needs security. But the Wendy that's connected to these wisdom tradition doesn't need all that security. The Wendy that's connected to that wisdom tradition knows I'm going to lose everything. It's only a question of when, and I don't panic. But when I'm in personality, losing something, my joke is, in Western culture, the only thing it's okay to lose is weight. Everything else, like, no, my thingy, you can't take my thingy, I've got to keep my thingy. But this other part of me is okay with losing. It's okay with releasing things. So the idea is not to try to transform, in this body of work, not to try to transform our personality into something that's confident and wise, because it always, from a neuroscience point of view, that always will kick in first when we're stressed. It never goes away. But we can work with how much time we spend there. And we can learn to be compassionate with that part of ourselves. Oh, there I am again, wanting security. Yeah. And here comes Mother Teresa. Here comes the Dalai Lama. So I can learn to move back and forth between these parts of myself. Because life doesn't flatline. Nobody stays centered. Anybody who says they do, I'd like to spend 10 minutes with them. I'm not buying it. But we can recover our center. Life does this. Yeah? So we have this sort of ability to shift from this place of constriction, of tightness, and move to a place of center, of openness. But to do it, we need something specific. Because normally what happens, I think, is the stressors are very specific. She said that, he did this, that happened. And then our antidote is relax and open. That they don't match. So if I can bring, he said that, I bring Mother Teresa to match that, that's a good match. So the more specific we are with what we bring through us, it matches the specificness of the stressor. So there's this sort of idea that we can just let go, but I don't think we can just let go. My sense is we need to invite something else to be present there. And so a lot of our homework is, how can I access inspiration? We have some inspiration cards back there you're welcome to take from some of the people that people have recommended. You can use nature, mountains, oceans, sky. As long as you have a specific visceral connection to it, then it can match the visceral reaction to the stressors. But if it's not specific enough, it's not a good match. And I end up telling myself, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And my body's going, I don't think so. Because the neocortex, which is what I'm talking to you now, neocortex to neocortex, understands all kinds of subtleties and gradations. The limbic system and the amygdala only has 2 programs, basically. It's from the millions of years we spent on the savannah, much older system than our neocortex, and it's either graze or lie and run. So where our neocortex can be telling ourselves, it's okay, and our body's into run or graze. So what we do in the leadership embodiment work is give the body some alternatives to graze or run, fight, flight, or freeze. So I've totally lost track of my time. Okay. So we'll do a little exercise, but first what I'd like to share with you is some of the research that they've been doing, is that flexor muscles, these are flexor muscles, right? Flexor muscles, if they're fired intensely for a minute, crossing our arms, tightening, that kind of thing, cortisol is released into our system. Cortisol is the chemical, they call it the anxiety chemical, that shuts down the part of the brain that governs big picture thinking, creativity, innovation, and risk-taking. Extensor muscles, these are extensor muscles, they're opening, reaching out, releases testosterone in our system, which cultivates the part of our brain that governs big picture thinking. It reinvigorates this creativity, risk-taking, and innovation. When we do this kind of thing, which is why people like to pet their animals and that kind of thing, oxytocin is released into our system. That's the connected chemical. So if we're firing flexors, it's going to be very hard to talk ourselves into feeling open and inclusive and connected. The muscle groups are huge. So I'd like you to run a little experiment with me. What I'd like you to do is fire some flexors and slump a little bit. You can cross your arms or just tighten up just a little bit. Okay, and I want you to think of something that happened in the recent past that was frustrating or irritating enough that when you think of it, don't freak yourself out. But when you think of it, you feel a little bit of that activation inside your core, that core tightening. So just go ahead and relive that for 10 seconds. Bless you. Okay, stop. I'm sure we all got there. I get there in about 2. All right. Now, I'm going to coach us through a different energetic pattern. What I'd like you to do is see if you can straighten up a little bit more. So if you can push your hips back in the chair a little bit more so you get that nice, good posture, sort of a dignified. And we're going to think of the breath instead of in and out as up and down. And that's because when I inhale, shoulders come up, and when I exhale, my shoulders go down. So what I'd like us to do is when you inhale, see if you can lengthen the back of your neck and think up the top of your head. And as you exhale, see if you can soften your shoulders and your front and breathe down into the earth. And the exhale needs to be a little bit longer than the inhale, or quite a bit. So inhale up, lengthening the back of the neck. Exhale down, softening the shoulders, breathing down into the earth. And one more just for threes. Inhale up, nice dignified spine. Exhale down, soften the front and the shoulders. Now, think about your what's called personal space, as if it's heat coming off your body, and think about the heat or your field, your space, coming off the back. And then extend it out a little further, and then the heat coming off the left and right sides, and the heat coming off the front. And give it a color as if you were drawing it for a child, and then make it a little bigger. Extend your personal space out a little bit more, so you've got other people inside of it. You're connected. Nice. And then let your jaw just get a little softer with gravity. And ask your body this question. What would it be like if there was a little bit more ease in my body right now? And just let yourself wonder. Now, bring that same event to mind that we were thinking about before and think about it again. And as you think about it, notice if it's different at all. Is it different for anyone? What was different about it? Anyone? Flatter, not so. Was there as much tension in your core? Doesn't matter anymore, yeah. In some cases. Anyone feel like it was a little further away? Yeah. Yeah. So basically, I coached us into a different energetic pattern, and it changed our perception. We can't change our minds with our minds alone. If we could have, we would have. My bookshelves abound with what I call shelf-help books. Right? A shelf-help book is a book, and I've written 2, and I'm about to put a 3rd out. Books that I read it, I love it. It sounds great. When I'm reading it, I'm in a most safe environment. I'm in my favorite chair, I have a glass of wine, a cup of tea, everything's good. Then I go out in the world, stuff happens, and all goes out the window, and I'm back to square one. Right? So the whole idea is if we can work more with the energetic system, we have the capability to help the right chemistry be in our body, which accesses that part of our brain, our mind, so we can help ourselves that way. And just notice that when we get stressed, we have a tendency to constrict. And so when we open ourselves, physically fire the extensor muscles, physically uplift, expand out, include other people in the space, and then invite. And so it's really about allowing that inspiration to come through us more often, and not trying to transform, in my case, not trying to transform myself into someone who no longer doubts or who's totally confident. It'll never happen. But I don't have to spend as much time indulging in my doubt. I'm like, oh, I'm doubting again. One of my Aikido teachers, my favorite Aikido teacher, Japanese guy, on the mat once, he was showing these beautiful techniques, and we tried, and then he stopped. He goes, oh, you're all so stiff, you must relax. His English isn't very good. He showed this beautiful fluid stuff. We tried again. Then he stopped us. He goes, now you're all spaced out. And he was really trying to communicate this, and he closed his eyes and he said, I want to see you're noble. I want to see you're awesome. I want to see you're shiny. So I'll leave you with that thought, this idea of noble, awesome, shiny. When it comes through us, it actually manifests in this way, and not like, oh, I'm so glad to be with you, and it's so nice, that you all are here, and thank you for inviting me to talk, right? Which communicates a totally different message than saying, I'm delighted to be here with you. It's a privilege to share these ideas with you. Thank you so much for inviting me to talk. It's different because I'm organizing my energy differently. So the more we can invite noble, awesome, shiny, or even a lizard push-up. That was another thing one of my clients said, I can't sustain this. I said, you don't have to sustain it. Just do little 5-second bursts. She said, like a lizard push-up? And whenever I say that to myself, it makes me smile. Because, you've seen the lizards do that? Actually, on YouTube, they have it to rock music, and it's so cool to see them. So we could do a quick lizard push-up, ding! We could be a little more noble, awesome, shiny, and we could start to cultivate and rehabilitate that part of ourselves so that we can continue to be even more noble, awesome, and shiny than you already are. Thank you so much.